Our New Testament reading this evening is from John's Gospel, the 6th chapter, verses 16 through 21. When evening came, Jesus' disciples went down to the sea, got into a boat, and started across the sea to Capernaum. It was now dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. The sea had become rough because a strong wind was blowing. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming near the boat, and they were terrified. But Jesus said to them, "It is I. Do not be afraid." Then they wanted to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the land toward which they were going. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Thank you to the family for inviting me to be here. I so appreciate it. Elbert was my friend. And I want you to know first and foremost how proud he was of his family. He would come into church every week and tell me what you were doing and where you were going. And he would share it with that proud sense that he was proud of you. It wasn't like, these are my kids and look what they're doing and how great they are and I must be a really great man. It was always really about you. And he was truly, truly proud of you. And I still have some money from China because you went to China and you came back and you gave him some money and he brought it to me, and we stood at the door as he was leaving worship and we just marveled at how far that money had gone, all the way around the world. And he wanted me to have it. But I wanted you to know how proud he was of you. The last time I saw Elbert, was it just last Saturday? And thank you for the invitation to visit with him at that time. He told me a story, and it was a story similar to what we heard from Scripture. It was a story about a very stormy sea. There were huge waves, and when he talked about it, his head went up like the waves and then down again. And he talked about being in the military and being on this sea and the number of boats, and not everybody made it because the storm was so severe. And that he was called to come up to the wheelhouse. And he could hardly finish. His eyes would fill with tears. And he kind of, I don't know if boats have steering wheels, but it was kind of like that. And he shared the preciousness of his survival, the grief of loss, people he didn't even know, but they were gone too soon. He shared with me his reverence, his love of life. The truth of the story, is it verifiable? Can we go through records and can we find those names? It doesn't matter. For him, Jesus came walking on the water. And what he shared with me is that Jesus always comes walking on the water to us. I met Elbert and I entered into a stormy sea of my own. But I always knew that he was that lighthouse of joy in the midst of the waves. He was my friend, and a very sincere friend at that. There was always that twinkle in his eye. Truly, he had a twinkle in his eye. I appreciated his friendship and the warmth that he shared with me. We saw each other weekly, but I knew that in that weekly time, there was that powerful connection, and that he was that kind of a friend, the powerful friend that you need in the midst of a stormy sea. He will be powerfully missed. I invite the family to come forward and share with us some of your remembrances.
Hello, everyone. What I'm going to read to you now is a poem that I wrote for my grandpa, framed in a cloth frame that I decorated with puffy paints and gave it to him one year for Christmas. Based on the puffy paint artwork, I must have been young. This is how it started. Grandpa. Noun, the father of your father or mother. This is a definition of you in the dictionary, but I think that it's lacking the real definition, at least the correct one to describe my grandpa. Always there to give me a laugh, tell a corny joke, sing me a song just to get under my skin. You care for me so much. All my friends know you as Grandpa B, and I can easily say they'll all get the biggest kick out of you as I do. Your tender soul is never seen without a smile on your face and the love for your family in your heart. Hey, Grandpa, do you remember all those times that we went for walks in the quarry with Gloria, and then afterwards I massaged her paws, thinking it would take the pain away from cancer? Or when we would duct tape coins to the railroad tracks, waiting for them to get smooshed, flattened beneath the noisy beasts? How about when you would always take that dead old bug off the shelf and harass my mother or me with it because you knew we'd always scream each and every time? And one of the most fondest memories we all remember is when I would cross my arms under my armpits and tuck my hands under my armpits and say, "Now, Elbert, you're getting on my last nerve." The memories I have about you in my life are the most memorable and superlative ones yet. I don't think there is enough words in this world that I could put together to make sense to tell you how grateful I am to have you in my life. Now, after reading this, wouldn't you agree that the writers of the Webster Dictionary need to make some slight revision of the definition of grandpa? Or maybe they should just have changed it to Grandpa B, noun, the greatest grandpa of all time. One more thing I would like to close with are a few lyrics that my grandpa would always sing to me anytime I was upset or not smiling. He even managed to sing it to me one last time before he could no longer. Whenever skies are gray, don't you worry or fret. A smile will bring the sunshine and you'll never get wet. So let a smile be your umbrella on a rainy, rainy day. Thank you. Thanks. I'm just gonna take this water with me.
Elbert Dorrance Babcock, born on 12/11/22, was a card-carrying member of what Tom Brokaw called the greatest generation. Born and raised in a tumultuous era marked by economic depression and war, Dad, along with his twin brother Ellis, developed values of personal responsibility, duty, honor, and faith. Brokaw goes on to say that those characteristics helped them to defeat Hitler, build the American economy, make advances in science, and implement visionary programs like Medicare. They humbly gave succeeding generations the opportunity to accumulate great economic wealth, political muscle, and the freedom from foreign oppression to make whatever choices they like. Dad B was a World War II veteran who served in the United States Navy on board several ships, including the USS Stockton and the Wilkes-Barre. He had so many stories about his adventures aboard ship, from superstorms at sea to how the red packet of dye spread in the ocean saved his twin brother's life when Ellis was shot down. He was proud of his service to his country and was glad to have visited the World War II Memorial with his sister and brother-in-law when it first opened. If you stopped by his house, you would be treated to his own little memorial wall filled with maps and photos. Elbert was a mailman who walked a route in Lackawanna for 32 years. It is likely that his excellent health could be attributed to his vocation all these years, because it has only been in the last year that Dad really slowed down and developed a medical condition. The medical community marveled that in his early 90s, he was one of their oldest patients on the least amount of medication. He knew he was very lucky in that regard and appreciated he was able to walk the course for 9 to 18 holes to golf and take Molly to the creek for walks. Dad had many canine friends throughout the years, from the dogs he raised when Heidi and Perry were kids, like Mandy and Gloria, to the next-door neighbor hounds. He loved them all. Molly, the Boston Terrier adopted from Aunt Wilma, was the last four-legged love of his life. The two of them were inseparable, and she could be found sitting at his feet begging for treats, chasing his golf balls and taking them to the back porch because he was not paying attention to her, looking over her shoulder to see if he was keeping up with her across the lawn, and curled up at his side all night long while they slept. The last 2 weeks of Dad's life, she only left his side for necessity reasons and said her final goodbye on Friday night by licking his hand while tucked up close to his heart. Dad loved to feed the birds in the backyard, and he could watch for hours as the golden finch, downy and pileated woodpeckers, grosbeaks, and cardinals flashed their colors as they perched on his many feeders. Grape jelly was purchased by the bottle for the Baltimore Orioles, and sugar water boiled and cooled for the hummingbirds. He delighted in showing the girls in the family the mealworms he carried in his hand out to the feeder for the yearly returning bluebird family. In his early years, Elbert fished and bowled, and then he took up golfing and was in constant pursuit of a better game. He read books, mostly about animals and World War II, watched TV, and completed dozens of puzzles each winter. Elbert had many endearing qualities and a couple of quirks as well. He was a jokester, and he was proud to make people jump, scream, and laugh, and in no particular order. There was a dead insect shell that would randomly appear tucked into napkins at the dinner table or left in a place for an unsuspecting, usually female, to find it. Dad would also make this sound like a wildcat through the open window or from around the dark corner and make kids and adults jump, laugh, and even cry. He had a singing fish and a hooting owl that could be activated to cause alarm. Of course, the one surefire way to get family participation was if anyone asked, "What time is it?" "It's howdy-doody time. It's howdy-doody time. It's howdy-doody time. It's howdy-doody time." I know there's other words, but that's all we ever learned. His jokes were never ending, and he never forgot a punchline. There were jokes that could usually be told in mixed company, which is rare. Here's one of our favorites. There was a bag of birdseed that hatched a bunch of those little miller moths, you know. There were male moths and female moths. Do you want to know how I knew which was which? Sure, Dad. Which were which? Well, the females were on the telephone and the males were on the bottles of beer. Ba-dum-bump. His nephew Skip said he will miss the twinkle in Uncle Elbert's eye and his quirky sense of humor. Won't we all? Dad was also a big flirt. That twinkle in his eye blossomed into a full-blown, beaming killer of a smile that literally had women swooning. He would sidle up to one and ask if she was cold, and before she could answer, he would say, "Don't worry, I've got an Armstrong heater." This was always followed by blushing cheeks and lots of giggling. I was always running interference and wondering if or when his antics were going to land him in court for harassment. However, every last female, myself included, knew with certainty that we were safe with the handsome charmer who was a true gentleman. From his female dentist to the women at Tops to the ladies at church, he would always find something lovely to say to make them feel special. His weekly trip to the Federal Meat Market was as much fun for them as it was for him. It was like he was on a small local theater stage doing a one-man comedy routine, and he could always be counted on to leave with their pie of the week to feed his sweet tooth. Elbert was a good man, and very much a family man. He provided for his wife Mary and his 2 children, Heidi and Perry, with a steadfast foundation of love. They took family vacations to Honey Harbor and Lake Nipissing with his brothers and their families, and spent hundreds of hours at Zor Valley for Shant family gatherings. From fishing to putting in the dock and swimming in the backyard to watching the trains go by, Elbert strung ordinary days into an extraordinary life. For 43 years, he and Mary had happy hour in the living room, and you better not interrupt. They played thousands of hours of cribbage and bridge with Nort and Irma. I could never say that, Nort and Irma. Progressive dinners and holiday celebrations were all happy times filled with good food and drink and literally in-laws and outlaws in every single room. Fred remembers knowing exactly when his aunt and uncle would depart, as Elbert would quip, "What do you say, Mayor?" Sister-in-law Joan recalls how Elbert was always game for any activity when he visited them in Florida or Maryland. Once, after returning from a boat ride, he declared his hearing aid was missing. Luckily, it was found in the trash where he had deposited fishy trash. And though it sounds fishy, it might just be the reason for his thereafter obstinate refusal to wear his hearing aids. The Shant family clan will collectively miss Elbert's bright smile, warm heart, and unique way of never having met someone he didn't like. The kids went to college, and then Heidi married Steve and had Brianna and Mallory. Perry married Linda and had Justin and Marissa, and those 4 grandchildren were the best-loved grandkids around. Egg hunts at Easter, picnics and bonfires in the summer, ice cream sundaes and overnights, and getting spoiled at Christmas are memories the kids will always carry. Ethan and Lucy arrived on the scene, and the great-grandkids dubbed Elbert B, and his refrigerator door was filled with their photos. Brianna and Steve Kadera's dog, Jack, gets special billing on the fridge as well. Heidi's weekly phone calls from Colorado were the highlight of Dad's week, as she filled him in on all the family news. Dad always remarked about how much Heidi reminded him of Mary, from how beautiful she is to her many accomplishments in handcrafting, gardening, cooking, but most important of all, grandmothering. In 2009, Dad came to live with us in an in-law apartment, and every evening at 7:30, Perry and Dad would sit in matching armchairs watching Jeopardy! Dad was proud of how Perry provided for his family and how talented he was in more areas than he could count. He was always so impressed by all the hard work Perry did around the yard and did his best to help with spring and fall cleanup. Dad took part in doing his share by, no surprise here, getting the mail every day. And he organized the recycling and took out the trash. Neat and tidy were his motto for everything he did, especially as he understood what serving the public was all about. Justin and Marissa were able to enjoy Dad's company more often as they lived local. Before Dad lived with us, Justin maintained his yard on South Crest Avenue with pride, and the G-Man was impressed with his grandson's ability to drive heavy machinery from backhoes to ski groomers. Recently, Justin asked Devin to marry him, and the ring she wears was Mom's. On Devin's last visit to see Dad, it was a tender moment between the two as she sat next to him on the bed and held up her hands so he could see the ring again. He pointed to the picture on the wall of Mom, and Devin remarked how beautiful she was, and Dad replied, "So are you, and you wear her ring just as well." Marissa is the youngest of the grands and has clocked the most hours in G-Man's company. The relationship between the two of them was beyond compare. The G-Man was her superhero who made any bad day better just by sitting in his company. His wisdom and love grounded her, and when she needed some sunshine or a song and some laughter, he would always deliver. Together they shared the care and keeping of Molly, and so while the G-Man is gone from her, Molly's a constant reminder of her favorite man. For 35 years, it has been one of my finest blessings to have called Elbert Dad B. He's always treated me like a daughter, and therefore I have always felt like one. We did not always agree on things, particularly politics and certain television news stations. However, we always agreed with respect and maybe just a little bit of eye rolling. It has been a privilege and honor to love and to be loved by him, and in this last year to care for him. He was gracious, generous, and kind. When his body was completely failing him, he still managed to act with courage and dignity. His quiet and abiding faith in God carried him through the war, Mom's ALS, his cancer, and the last days of his life. So I'm going to need some help with your final goodbye, or my final goodbye. Whenever I left the house or when he turned in for the night, this is how it went. See you later. After a while. Love you, Dad.